Welcome to this explainer. Go ahead and settle in, take a nice deep breath, and join me on what I think is a truly fascinating, grounded tour of the mind. Today, we're going to look closely at how the very biology inside our heads, the physical structures, the cells, and the chemicals, quietly shapes our everyday lives.
So consider this for a moment. Why do you automatically reach for a snack when you're feeling stressed out? Or, why do you take the exact same route to work every single morning without even consciously thinking about it? I'll just pause for a second here so you can reflect on your own daily routines.
Well, the answer to those questions isn't just a matter of willpower or some random coincidence. It actually all comes down to your brain's physical hardware and its chemical software. Our decisions, our sudden bursts of emotion, and even those stubborn habits we just kind of can't seem to break, they're all direct outputs of physical brain structures and tiny chemical messengers working together behind the scenes.
To make sense of all this incredible complexity, here's our roadmap for today. 1. Shaping your unique personality. 2. The emotional nervous system. 3. Brain chemicals and mental health. 4. Your executive decision maker. And 5. How habits take over. Don't worry, we're going to break this down so it's super easy to digest.
Okay, let's dive into this. Part 1. Shaping your unique personality.
We're going to start at the very surface, the outer layer of your brain known as the cortex. It turns out that the actual physical shape of this outer layer dictates fundamental aspects of who we are. Scientists call this the cortical stretching hypothesis. You see, as human brains evolved and expanded rapidly, they still needed to fit inside our, relatively slow-growing skulls. So the brain evolved to maximize its surface area and folding, but at the expense of thickness. Think of it exactly like stretching and folding a rubber sheet. As you stretch it to create more surface area and more folds to fit it into a tight space, the rubber sheet itself literally becomes thinner. And this very same process happens as we grow from childhood into adulthood.
Now, you might be wondering, what does this all mean for us? Well, this stretching and folding isn't just biological trivia. It visibly links to our personality traits. For example, research shows that high levels of neuroticism, which is basically how moody or emotionally reactive we might be, are actually linked to increased thickness but reduced area and folding in certain regions at the front of the brain. On the flip side, openness, the trait that governs our curiosity, our creativity, and open-mindedness, shows the exact opposite pattern. A highly open personality is associated with a thinner cortex but much more area and intricate folding. Your physical brain shape is quite literally holding the blueprint of your disposition.
Moving right along. Part 2. The emotional nervous system.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is what happens when we move deeper inside the brain, beneath that outer cortex. We arrive at the limbic system. If the cortex is our modern reasoning center, the limbic system is the ancient engine room. It houses the primitive survival instincts that deeply drive our behavior. These specific components work together as your emotional nervous system. You've got the hypothalamus, acting as a regulator for hormones, hunger, and your sleep cycle. Right next to it is the amygdala, your emotional computer, processing fear and social signals. Then there's the thalamus, which routes sensory information. And finally, the hippocampus, which is absolutely vital for forming new memories.
Let's put this into a daily life example. Imagine you're walking down the street and you meet a dog. The dog happily wags its tail, maybe licks your hand. Instantly, your hippocampus and your amygdala collaborate to store that specific positive memory. So the next time you see a dog, you instinctively feel calm and happy. But if that dog had acted aggressively and growled at you, that same system would store a very different memory, triggering a rapid fight-or-flight response to protect you next time. It's just a seamless, unconscious collaboration happening every single day.
Which brings us to part 3, brain chemicals and mental health.
Let's transition from those physical structures down to the microscopic level. The brain doesn't just work through anatomy, right? It communicates via neurotransmitters, the chemical messengers connecting our brain to our body. You can kind of think of this list like a menu of the brain's software. Serotonin is your everyday mood and sleep regulator. When it's low, we often see depression and anxiety. Dopamine is all about reward and motivation. It's that rush of pleasure when you achieve a goal or, eat something delicious. Norepinephrine manages your stress response, getting you ready to act under pressure. GABA acts as your brain's natural calming agent, helping you relax. Glutamate does the heavy lifting for learning and memory. And acetylcholine facilitates attention. When these chemicals are perfectly balanced, we feel motivated, calm, and sharp. But when they fall out of balance, it directly impacts our mental health and everyday well-being.
All right, part 4, your executive decision maker.
And this brilliantly illustrates what happens when we zoom back out to the very front of the brain, right behind your forehead. This is where we find the CEO of your mind, the prefrontal cortex. One of its most important jobs is managing the conflict between immediate gratification and long-term reward. Imagine you have the sudden urge to splurge on a luxury item right now because, let's face it, it'll feel great in the moment. Your deeper, more primitive brain regions are pushing hard for that immediate reward. But your prefrontal cortex steps in. It evaluates the future, remembers your goals, and allows you to delay that gratification, saying, actually, let's save this money for our future home instead.
In neuroscience, it's often said that the prefrontal cortex controls the mental option to delay immediate gratification for a better or more rewarding longer-term gratification result. I really love that framing. This top-down processing is the very definition of human executive function. It's what allows us to act intentionally based on our internal goals, rather than just reacting impulsively to whatever shiny object is right in front of us.
Let's move to and see how this builds into part 5.
How habits take over.
Now, making conscious executive decisions all day requires a massive amount of energy, so the brain has a clever way of offloading this work to a deeper region called the basal ganglia. There's a major difference between intentionally deciding to do something and acting automatically. Goal-directed actions happen when your prefrontal cortex is fully engaged. You're thinking about the consequence of your action. But a stimulus-driven habit? That's automatic. Think of getting ready in the morning. You don't consciously debate how to tie your shoes or brush your teeth. The antecedent stimulus, just waking up and walking into the bathroom, automatically triggers the routine.
The brain achieves this incredible efficiency through a step-by-step handover of control. First, the prefrontal cortex intentionally learns a new goal-directed action. As you practice it over and over, the brain passes this activity down a chain of command. Finally, control is completely handed over to your automatic sensory motor network. You literally no longer have to think about it, your body just effortlessly executes the habit.
But it's important to understand that this remarkable efficiency mechanism can sometimes work against us. The very same habit formation loop, when hijacked by potent rewards or incidental pairings in our environment, actually helps explain the motivational compulsion we see in addiction. The behavior moves from being a conscious choice to an automatic, deeply ingrained response that operates totally independently of our conscious goals.
So the crucial point is that our minds are incredibly complex landscapes where biology, chemistry, and structure literally dictate our daily experience. Think of a habit you performed today, or maybe a sudden emotional reaction you had. Which part of your brain was really in the driver's seat? Was it your prefrontal cortex making a conscious choice, or your basal ganglia running an automatic script? I hope this tour has given you a newfound appreciation for the incredible machinery operating inside your head and leaves you eager to pay just a little more attention to the quiet biology shaping your life. Thank you so much for joining me today.